Update 32 is about to come out, and one thing it does not contain is the Infestation update. And so we are getting a lot of questions from players of our game, asking us, when is the Infestation update coming out? What is the current state of that thing? Because we announced it way back this past spring, months and months ago, and people are legitimately wondering where it has gone. So I don't know the answer to that question. That's why I brought Eric here. Eric, as the Associate Product Director on State of Decay 2, what is going on with the Infestation update?
Yeah, so we when we were working on the Infestation update, we did two pushes into the public test realm, um, and then we got a really good great amount of feedback that came back from that, and so we've had a lot of issues that were like, okay, these are all these things that we want to address, but it was still a lot of work in front of us, and it's a pretty complex system. The infestations, plague heart sieges, all this stuff, they kind of interact, and it's very complex to kind of work with everything and make sure that changing one thing doesn't screw up something else. And we also knew that we had a lot of work left in terms of just like making sure that we're teaching all these new features appropriately to all the players, and then have all this polish we needed to do. So we knew there was still a good chunk of work left, but we're a pretty small team. And so we were also working on the Forever Community update at the same time. And we figured, just with how small of a team and limited of resources that we have, we want to just kind of focus. We figured the Forever Communities was definitely a more finite and like discrete chunk of work that we kind of understood the bounds of. So we wanted to really focus on that first, get that out the door, and then we could get back to this really meaty, like complex, set of features that is the infestations and like sieges update. So yeah, we did that. We went and focused on the Forever Communities. I mean, that took even a little longer than we wanted, because then just making sure that it's polished, and like making sure like things like data integrity and stuff like that, making sure people don't lose legacy characters. A lot of stuff that ended up taking a decent amount of time for that. So we just had to take a while to make sure that was all wrapped up nicely before we could put our attention back on infestations. So now that Forever Communities is all out the door and is in players' hands, now we've turned our focus back towards infestations, and have been trying to kind of address any of like the things that came up from the PTR, and any like additional opportunities that we saw as a result of that, and kind of just trying to get it into shape to possible to get it back into the PTR for another round of testing with players. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where it's at. We're kind of just wrapping up that the next round of public test realm changes, essentially. Um, yeah,
Yeah, so the
I think
challenge
that summarizes it.
that does, yeah. So the challenge, like you were saying, about the what's it called, the Forever Communities update being a finite thing. That's a really good important point about the Infestations update, because working on the Infestations is not like, for instance, planning a mission where you know exactly what you're going to ask the player to do, like how to test it, what you're going to discover. There's limits to how weird it can get. But with something like the Infestations, which are heavily simulated, it's not like we just plan, oh, this is exactly what happens with infestations all the time. Like, the player has
Yeah.
to, like the player's going to interact with the system's going to interact with the player, different systems are going to interact with each other, and it takes a ton of testing and practice and learning to figure out, like, you make one small change, and you could
It
actually, that could have, like, a bunch of downstream consequences, right?
Yeah, it ripples outwards and affects a bunch of things you might not have expected. And you're like, oh, now we got a new issue we have to solve. So it really is. It's really, really delicate, and you have to make sure that you poke at one thing, then you're gonna have to poke at something else, and then that's gonna make you poke at something else. So it's kind of a tricky balancing act, and the infestations in general is kind of a very like long form kind of feature, where it's not something you experience like in like a couple minutes or something like that. It's something that plays out over a long period of time. So there's a lot in there that also that's like, oh, after you have to do a lot of long-term play testing with people playing for a long time to see like, oh, how it behaves at the beginning of a new community could be very different than like near the late game.
Yeah.
So
And it would be
there's
a really bad
that.
idea for us to, like, play it, to come up with a couple of what seem like simple changes, test them out for a few minutes, be like, oh yeah, that seems good, and then just release it to the players. And then they discover what garbage we made, after they play the game for a long time. they get to discover, you know, how bad and ill thought through the experience was if we didn't put that much effort into it. And I don't think players actually want to be in that situation where it's their job to find out what we ruined. Instead of, we should do that work. We should study the feature, get volunteers who get involved in our public test realm to test the feature for us, and we shouldn't put it out there to the players, to the full broad audience, until we have put the time in to make sure it's actually the experience they want to have.
Yeah, and that's a big reason why we have the public test realm, because it does require a lot of iteration and seeing and just trying to account for all the different play styles different players can have, and seeing how this might work really great for one set of players, but then a whole different set of players have these other issues that we didn't consider. So it's kind of this back and forth where you have to you got to make changes, get it into some players' hands, then get some feedback and see what does work, what doesn't work, what parts of the game, like late game, early game, have issues and stuff like that, and you kind of keep iterating on that.
So basically, the reason why the Infestation update has taken so long is because this was actually this isn't a case of something going wrong. This is a case where this feature was always going to take a lot of time to get right. This was always something that was going to need a lot of research, a lot of time. And so basically, once you sort of realize the degree of research this thing was going to take and the amount of time it was going to take, you basically decided to put it off a little bit and spend the time on something that we knew we could really deliver this year, which was Forever Communities. Forever Communities, we knew exactly what that work was. We definitely could get it done. It required a little bit of that kind of long-term testing, but not nearly as much as Infestations did. And so basically, if players wanted to have an update this year, Forever Communities was going to be the best bet. And so that's when we focused our fire on that. And then,
exactly.
And now we're taking our time really getting the Infestation update right.
Yeah. That's basically it.
So right now, I'm assuming that we are not in a position to tell players when to expect the Infestations update, except that it won't be this year.
The actual release, no, it will not be
final
this
release.
Year. Yeah, no.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the PTR in the next segment, because we really should, because there's a lot coming down that pipe too. But as far as Infestations go, I basically just, I want to thank the audience for being as patient as they have, because we, basically we told them about this in the spring. We released it into the PTR shortly after that. Players got a taste of it, and they haven't really gotten to integrate it into their game for a whole year. And we understand that's a big deal, right? That we're asking you to have a lot of patience with us. And so we really appreciate the patience that our audience has shown. And, I think we can say that this is now the main focus of the team, figuring this out, getting it ready to go. And whatever time it takes, it's going to take. But the Infestation update is coming, and their patience is going to be paid off.
Yeah. No, I think they'll be happy. I mean, I'm sure there's going to still be things we need to tweak here and there, but I think after coming out of that last PTR and then having, the things that we wanted to look at, and now that we've actually kind of gotten to address some of those things, I think we've got some really cool new stuff that I'm pretty excited about.